Hello, welcome to the DIMP Digital Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Appleyard, and we are on session number 7. This time, I'm joined by a lifelong friend, James Piper. Piper, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good.
Nicknames. Now, I always start with a nickname. Lester. Lester off of GTA 5, that is your nickname.
Well, when people be thinking Piper, you just call me Piper.
Well, I was trying to get it in there. Biff's trying to get Lester in there, but no one's buying it, and he's not got any seal of approval from me. I tend to sort of decide the nicknames.
Lester's a slug.
It won't stick. Biff's trying his best, but you're new to the podcast, so I thought it'd be good to, as always, you give everyone an overview of what you've currently got, what you like playing, and your preferences, really, so everyone knows what you're all about.
Yeah, cool. So, out of all my consoles I've got at the moment, I've got a PlayStation 4. So I've been playing that at the moment. And primarily that's a lot of my gaming. However, I also play, I'd probably say that's about 50% of my gaming. The other sort of 50% of my gaming is done on my Mac computer.
Yeah.
So
with about 50% of the games available because it's not Windows.
Yeah, I don't get a lot of games. That is true. There's a lot of good games out there I can't play unless I boot my my Windows, not my Windows, my Mac into Windows.
Yeah.
But no, that's annoying. But it's a lot more games are becoming more readily available to Mac, and there's a lot of games because the Mac computer is growing more and more as time goes on. Games are realizing they're losing a certain part of the market by not having Mac and Linux games really. So. So that's what I sort of spend my other half doing. Yeah. Apart from that, I play mobile, and just before I turned up here, I actually just bought a Nintendo DS. So
excellent.
Yeah, I haven't had, last time I had a Nintendo handheld was probably my Game Boy Color.
Yeah, I had a Game Boy Color, Pokemon Red.
Yeah, I had Pokemon Blue. I remember us going up to Lakeside Camping Park when we were like 7 years old, playing that in the back of your parents' car.
Yeah, it used to make me feel sick. That did. I used to get car sick. Yeah. And looking down, that used to do me in. But so what sort of games do you actually play though? So you've got the PlayStation 4, which you've only just had for a couple of months, but you've obviously had a Mac for as long as quite a while. What sort of games is Piper playing? Is he playing single player games, multiplayer games, shooters? What sort?
At the moment, it's sort of a mix between sort of two type of games. I play very much what I call a story-based game where I can really immerse myself into a story.
Yeah.
So not very much multiplayer, if no multiplayer at all, and just
co-op.
Not really. I'm not a co-op fan. I just sort of like doing a story
bastard.
I like sort of like blasting my way through a story, sort of at a relatively quick pace, and enjoying it like as if I'm enjoying a film, and not having to think too much about it, but just enjoying the story.
Yeah.
So I tend to play games like that. And then on the other side, I also probably tend to play a bit more of the games where you create your own story. Yeah. So like the games a bit like Minecraft, Starbound, Prison Architect, and so forth and stuff like that. So they're the sort of two main sort of genres I play.
Excellent. Well, I think it's before we actually crack on with the main bulk of this that we should mention that you are a white PS4 enabler. You took the black one off my hands for a very generous price, which enabled me to buy the beast that is sitting there right next to you. I mean, obviously you've now seen it in the flesh. You're clearly mesmerised by it, and I imagine you want to trade in the black one of mine and get yourself a white one, yeah?
Well,
look at it. Just
looking at it now. I think I'll probably stick with the black for the moment.
What?
It blends in quite nicely. That's like a centerpiece in the middle of the room. You walk in, you literally have to walk around yours.
Wow.
On show.
It's got more power though, isn't it? That's what I've been told. More power, better graphics, sort of like the Steam boxes there. That's the top version of it.
Really?
Quicker.
Is that what they're saying? Gervais style, that is.
Very lies, massive lies, that is. Okay, let's get started. I don't think that The Last of Us gets mentioned enough on this podcast and on this channel because obviously the other guys don't have a PlayStation 4 and they didn't really play much of the PS3s. You've just recently played through the entire campaign and its DLC. In fact, it's the first game that you've played through on the PlayStation 4. What's your spoiler-free thoughts of the game itself? Did it live up to the hype? Because you had me telling you it was a fantastic game. I'm sure Biff was on your case telling you how good it was. Did it live up to the hype that we'd sold it to you?
Like anything, when you things get hyped up, it's always there ready to fall, and it's already on a pedestal. So you think of it and you go in a bit objectively, and you think that it could just going to fall down, but it didn't. It completely didn't. It was fantastic. Like I said at the start, when it was just in introductions, I love games that I can just sort of play through and enjoy the story, but also feel that I'm a part of that story as well. I had the settings set to normal, which was probably, I think, the second. So it was like they have like beginners, normal, hard,
survival, grounded.
And I didn't want to do the high end where you really struggle to get through it, or you have to be a really, really good game player. I just wanted something where I could go in, and if I needed to blast away opponents or zombies or humans or whatever I came up against, I could. With a struggle, and I died a fair few times, but I could just do that, and I could then enjoy what a fantastic story they'd put together. And they clearly been influenced by some of the zombie genres that are out there, and how big now, for example, like the Walking Dead series is, and how it's nice to see a zombie game that isn't just about surviving zombies or zombies running at you. It's about the story and about the people, and a lot of games are starting to come through now as well after that game particularly, that human interaction and storylines are actually really important to develop the zombie genre. Otherwise you've just got zombies running at you and you've got a shooter, which is just not my cup of tea.
No, I mean they do develop the characters well, Joel and Ellie, and it is a pleasure to play through, and it is like playing through a film at times. The story, how it's written, and the gameplay as well. Let's not forget how the game actually plays. It's fantastic to play through. There's not really any gaps or holes in it. Everything's beautifully looking. It all works really well. It's all refined. It's all polished up to the max. There's no scrappy bits in the game. It's all completely, brought up to the max, and it looks fantastic. I mean, you might mention about blasting through the zombies. Was that what your main tactic was? Was you trying to sort of keep stealthy where you could, and then if you needed to, just start the struggle and try and blast your way through?
So I would definitely start at each part very stealthy, and try and go through as much as possible, stealth my way through them. And I do that maybe on the smaller interactions with people and zombies. I could quite happily go through that and stealth them. But when you were doing some of the bigger bigger missions, well, they're not quite missions, but bigger parts of the storyline where there's a lot of zombies or a lot of humans that you have to kill. I found that I would stealth my way so far, and I would eventually get noticed, and then I found I would just, instead of maybe using my head and running away and hiding like I should have done and waited for it to calm down, I would then just pull the gun out and start going mental and it would work to some extent, and then I sort of cheated the game a little bit. I would sort of start blasting away, and obviously it would attract loads of attention, people start running, and then I'd run away into another corner, and then that would sort of checkpoint it.
Sometimes
so I was sort of cheating the game in a little way by getting through some of these sort of big interactions, but only because I was really enjoying the story and I wanted to see how it developed further. And the game itself was really good in terms of, I always thought when I went into an open area something was going to happen. So a lot of the time when you're walking around there's bottles and bricks everywhere you pick up and throw to try and attract or detract the zombies and people, so they go and look in a different area. And they put that throughout the whole game, even areas where nothing was happening. So you were thinking you're on your edge all the time. There could be a zombies coming along, there could be humans just around the corner, because they've got these bottles and bricks here. There was never the parts where you were walking through an area where there wasn't
some tool
for us to use.
Keeps you unsettled because you think, what's going to happen next? Where am I going to bump into a horde of infected or humans and whatnot? I think you touched on an interesting point about how the zombie genre essentially is blown up. Nearly every video game these days has some sort of zombie mutated. It's hordes of infected people that you have to fight off. And I agree with you that the fact that this had those elements in it, but the fact that the story was the main focus on it, and they weren't really, the infected parts of the game weren't really the focus. When you're dealing with the other humans and how their AI works, there's a lot more intelligent, and I found them a lot more difficult to deal with. Do you think that's something that all games should adopt? Sort of go away from using the tried and tested methods of just blasting a zombie, blasting people away, and just trying to slow the pace down, because at times it was very slow during the game, but it all just seemed to work. It seemed to fit together really well.
Yeah, and I think it's a definitely learning curve for a lot of games, and as you said, that this title was released almost 2 years ago. So there are other games now that are starting to come out that are a bit like that. But it was definitely a wake up call for a lot of games. There's been a lot of zombie games, as you said, where they just start running at you, or you're in a room and they're running at you, and you're just literally blasting away, and you've got unlimited bullets. There's no suspense. It's just literally like kill, fast paced. Like unfortunately, like an online sort of multiplayer now, like a COD or Destiny, where it is literally run, shoot, kill. Whereas they brought in a very nice aspect of they're slowing it down, giving us a story, something that we can enjoy and take away, we are talking about not giving away spoilers, which is something you don't talk about much in games. You talk about it a lot in films, but spoilers, you don't want to give away spoilers in games, and that's usually, you talk about that with games with really good stories. You're not going to say, I'm not going to give away the spoiler of Call of Duty, because it's just a shoot 'em up, and everyone, there is no real story to it. However, that they've given us a story where you don't want to spoil it for other people, and it builds up that suspense. And it's definitely something more games should take note of. There's always a place for every different type of games. There's different types of people that like different types of games. But it's definitely worth more games thinking, if we're going to put a bit of a story into it, how can we build that gameplay and that story together, instead of just throwing in a bit of the other. And unfortunately, going into the DLC now, there was a part where maybe they got it wrong as well in that the DLC for this, where it felt like they split the story and the action up. So not to give anything away, but there's two storylines running sequence, so you jump in between the two, and it feels one's there just to give you some sort of action, and the other's there's to give you a bit of an interesting story. And so maybe they didn't think that through on a DLC. Like they had plenty of great ideas. You mentioned about Joel could have been prior.
Yeah, it could have been prequel, couldn't it? Going back to when he was a hunter, and you've got a different sort of setup and whatnot. For the game. I mean, without giving anything away, I mean, would you want to see another Last of Us game set in this universe in particular? Do you think they've created a good? We talk about something like Destiny that's come out, and they're talking about that's going to be a 10-year game. It's going to be all set in Destiny, and it's going to be that universe. It's going to work. Could something like The Last of Us have sequels bolted on, just tackling different parts of like people's character and different areas of the world? Could this universe expand and become a bit bigger than just one game? What they've got, got the Infected.
They've got an open platform there, because they could potentially do a completely different story with completely different characters,
do new
just in
stories,
different areas,
tackle new issues,
and obviously not to give anything away, they could obviously have a follow-on post the story that they've just had, or prior to the story they just had, because there's a massive gaps that they haven't answered of what's going on. You could potentially
20 years it gets skipped forward, doesn't it, from the beginning? I can't remember it's 10, so there's a big gap there of how the world just crumbles into this infected state where everyone's sort of out to for themselves. There's quarantine zones and all sorts.
There's different sections of groups as well that you could potentially think about playing as. There's different. So you got normal people. You got like the anti-establishment type of people called the Fireflies. You could potentially do a story as them. You could figure out why that establishment has been set up, or potentially maybe the government, the police type of people, or even the hunters and the people and stuff like that. So there's plenty of different options they could go down with story, and the game's really theirs to be taken, a bit like the TV series The Walking Dead. They could potentially, all the characters die in it, but they could still go on and do other things because it's such a wide variety and there's so many different subsections going on. So I sort of expect good things of potentially, and I hope they do a second. Yeah, no, so do I. I mean, I hope they do something better in that universe and carry on with it, and because I think it is a terrific series that it's got so much potential. I mean, the first one's had potential, it's lived up to it, and if they can do something similar with the second one and carry it on, who knows what they could do with that series. That could be fantastic. It's already been a film announced, so it's obviously caught the attention of people in Hollywood. So you have to say Naughty Dog have done a sterling job, and you haven't gone out there and played it, and if you do own a PlayStation, go out there and get hold of it. It is a great game, and I'd advise you to play through it, and it's fantastic. So Steam, it's a gaming haven for cheap games,
for indie games, for PC games, for original games. There's always, well, not always deals going on, but you have certain times of the year, there's unbelievable deals going on. There's one going on now at Christmas. You can pick things up for £2, £3, £4. What do you make of Steam as an application, as a outlet for gaming and sending and getting hold of games on the PC or the Mac?
I think it's the best thing
since sliced bread.
Sliced bread. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think it's shaken up the industry, which it needed to quite a bit. You now have like the what you call the indie or the arcade type areas within the PlayStation and the Xbox now, and I directly think that's because of Steam and the way they rolled out gaming. And
it gives them a platform, isn't it? It's giving them a platform to get the games out there and allow people to access them. Yeah,
you can look into games now, and it may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people working on it. So they can't produce a big title, but they can produce a game that people absolutely love. Yeah. And there's so many examples of that where it's worked, where it's just been a couple of people and it's just exploded. And it. To talk about it, you got Minecraft. That obviously didn't start that wasn't on Steam, but that was a game that was put out there onto a medium that was away from the consoles. Then you got DayZ, which was one of the fastest selling. It raised like 20 million in its first week. When it did its standalone, that was on Steam. You've got plenty of games on there where it was presented by small groups. Project Zomboid is one that we've both played, which is fantastic, and I think that it just allows the smaller, or just a group of maybe
gives them a profile, doesn't it? Because if it's on Steam, I don't know, for some reason, if it's on Steam, it seems legit. Do you know what I mean? It's got that attachment to it now. They've built a good credibility base up Steam, and if it's on Steam, or if it's not on Steam, I'm now reluctant to go away and dig out these games. I think, well, why is it not on Steam? Because they've got so much that's on there. They've got such good deals going on. And it's easy to access. It is all downloadable stuff. It's all digital stuff.
Yeah, and you said there's the sales as well. The price you get the games for. Like there's one going on right now, which is the Christmas sale or the winter sale, and obviously the deals won't be on there when this podcast, or you lot listen to this podcast.
Some might.
But some might. But like, for example, we were just looking at it now before we came on air, and we were just looking at, for example, Papers, Please, less than £2.
Yeah.
You can buy titles where you would spend 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours on, and you're paying £2-3. There's so much on it, and I tend to find in these periods that I buy games, and maybe I don't even play them, but for a price of between £2 to 7, 8, 9, £10,
anything under a tenner, you're laughing.
It's a great deal, and you can't fault Steam for really pushing that. You just only have to look at the stores on the PlayStation 4, for example, and you've got games there that are 2-3 years old that still they're trying to sell for like £45, and whereas that on Steam you would be able to get that for a game maybe that's 2-3 years old, that's a good game, you would be able to get maybe for £15
or less.
But it's on less than on sale. We both got Left 4 Us Dead 2 for free.
Oh, Left 4 Dead 2. We didn't pay for that.
We didn't pay a penny, but Steam just gave it away. Yeah. And you can't, and that's a bigger title for what sort of Steam is used to. So it's great. It enables the big boys, the small boys, all to play in the same sort of park and on a levelish playing field, and it allows the community to really drive the games that they like.
Yes.
And really put money back into the games they like, and it's definitely the concept of, on Steam, you talk with your wallet. So if you pay for the game, a lot of games you can help develop and stuff like that. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good point you raised about them being on a level playing field with the big boys, because they get pretty much the same exposure on the Steam store as a AAA title. So it has all the big titles that come out on it. You can purchase most of them through Steam, unless it's a EA title. They tend to go through Origin. But in general, most of the AAA games are available on Steam. But then alongside it, you'll get smaller titles that have not got as big a budget, but they'll be right there on the front screen. You can click that and go straight to their page. And I think you're right. It does drive the user base, and you can see what's popular, what's trending, what's going really well, and it allows people to vote with their wallets because it's at an affordable price. Whereas that's what we just mentioned on the stores on the Xbox and the PlayStation 4, nothing new on there is less than £50, and that really irks me because you can normally buy a disc for £40, and you think, right, they've had to pay to produce the disc, the fucking paper, all that shit, ship it, and for some reason or another, it's more expensive to get a digital version, which I can't then trade in. Got to keep that if it's on your digital, and it's, you know, too much money in my opinion for a digital copy. And what Steam do correctly is they price it all properly. It's all priced up at how it should be. It's below what the RRP is for a disc-based game because obviously the costs are less, and as we mentioned again, the deals on there are just great. You could easily buy 10 games in a sale accidentally. You could just go on there and spend, and you wouldn't probably spend more than £20.
No, you can get some really good games. Like you get Castle Crashers 9p at the moment. You can get, as I said, Project Zomboid. I think it's on there for £6 at the moment. You can get Papers, Please for under £2 at the moment. You can get 7 Days to Die under £10 at the moment. Some really good indie titles that are really good value, and you'll get a lot of gameplay out of it. And I tend to find that, like, I don't know about you, but for example, and this is just sort of thinking a bit out of the box-ish here, like when you go and want to check out a restaurant or you want to check out somewhere, you'll look at TripAdvisor, for example, and to get some reviews. Well, that's what Steam also incorporates within Steam. I go there and I will look at all the reviews before actually purchasing a game, so I can see how the community are feeling about it, see whether other people spent their money on the game and say, look, it's not worth, the developers here are not developing a game, or you can go on it and say, people going, it's fantastic, it's well worth, and you can then see, it says next to the person's name how many hours they played, and I tend to find
that's really helpful.
I look down and there are games on there like Armour Life, for example, and you look down at the reviews and people love that game. It's a real community game. Oh, not Armour Life, sorry, Armour Free, but that's a fall off. But people have played 1,000, 2,000 hours. I've seen people with 10,000 hours have left reviews, and that's a lot of gameplay for something. That game on there's, I think, about £30.
Yeah, that's one of the more expensive ones.
But you see the amount of gameplay you get out of that. Would someone get the same amount of gameplay out of something like Destiny or Grand Theft Auto or that on the console? I'm not too sure that they would. So it weighs up in different things. So you can actually see how good the reviews are and compare it to how many hours they put into the game.
That is. I didn't know they did that. Actually, that's quite handy to know, because too often you've got obviously the critic reviews that you can go on certain websites, at big media sites, and check their reviews out again. You're sort of getting one person's opinion usually, and then you think, well, they've been paid off for this. There's always those thoughts that go through your mind. Or you can go on a forum and get people's opinions, and again, you don't really know. Someone might play something for an hour and then just, shit, I couldn't do that, and then they've bin it off and won't play it, and then that'll get a bad rap. Whereas now what you're saying on Steam is the users, it will tell you how much time they've put in. So if something's got a bad review and you can say they've played 8 hours of it, they've given it a good go and they weren't happy with it, it sort of gives it a bit more justification, a bit more clout behind what they're saying, because you get loads of people that just complain for the sake of things when they don't give things a chance. So that's actually very good. I did not know that was even there. So I don't think we can really fault Steam. They don't do a lot wrong.
You can maybe talk that they tried to go maybe down the route of what I call the Android type phone, where they sort of released a software so people could produce consoles for Steam games, and that hasn't really taken off to where we'd like it.
It's not hampered us though as a consumer. It's one of the things where we've not been punished because they wanted to try something different and spend and invest a lot of money. What I'm a bit worried about with Steam is the Steam consoles or the Steam machines, and what I'm concerned about is that might take priority, that you might need a Steam machine to get, I don't know, I'm making this up, but to get better deals, or some of the newer games might only run on a Steam. But those sort of thoughts I'm having, I hope they don't, must reiterate, I'm just making that up off the top of my head, but that's the only thing I can see maybe stinging them. But the trouble is they've got such a big fan base, it'd be stupid for them to then slap everyone in the face that's got Windows, Mac, Linux. I can't see them doing that, but that is my only concern, is that there might be a bit too much focus on this Steam console, which they seem quite keen to push, and I don't really like the concept of it, because it feels too much like a PC, because you can upgrade them, you get different versions. I think what works really well with these things, the consoles that I'm pointing at, is that there's one size fits all. It's a standard bit of hardware kit. Everyone's got the same. You're on a level playing field. You're not looking over at Halls going, oh, he's got a better memory card than me and it's running better. So I prefer the Steam box was just a set standard sort of specification that everyone had access to at a reasonable price. But I mean, we don't know enough to go into it.
Yeah, I think though if what you said, I sort of get your views, but if you then start limiting, well, yeah, I'm going to have to disagree. But if you start limiting the console, then you're going to start limiting the gameplay and the games that can be developed. Like for example, you look at the consoles and you got GTA that came out recently and said, well, we've only been able to do a lot of this stuff now because there's more power in the newer consoles, so we're able to push more of this stuff that we've wanted to do for ages, like the heist stuff. So they've only been able to do that now because of the newer consoles.
Well, if they're coming out on the old consoles as well, though.
Are they?
Yeah, they'll be there.
All right, I didn't know that. But
it's things like the first-person mode they've added. But here's a question. I mean, it's a bit off subject, but do you feel that the consoles sort of drive the game development, line? So publishers and developers look at what PlayStation 4 and Xbox One do. I don't think they look too much at what we're doing because they tend to be going away doing their own thing, which is fine. I think it's good.
Yeah.
But do you think that they look at the hardware they've got in front of them and they say, right, here's the limit of what these consoles can offer. Let's make a game that's within those limits. You see very few games that are PC only, and that are really pushing. I mean, the graphics are always good, but in terms of, I imagine the gameplay that's available in these big machines, these big gaming rigs, is going to far exceed anything that these things can produce in the next 5 years. But for whatever reason, everything's always on a console as well. So do you think they drive the development cycle and how they can push boundaries?
I think obviously with anything the console will always,
it's so
not always,
accessible,
but it's such a built-in. It's as we're a generation now. So we're 27, 26, 27. Wow. I forgot my own age.
Adding years on. 21.
We're now a generation that have grown up with consoles and
gamepad in hand, TV,
and being able to use accessibly, and you can see games have grown with the generations, and it probably just the generation before us as well, but it had the same sort of things, and you see the games have been growing older with the generations, and that's been mainly driven through console based. But then that you have to say that's then pulled people like two friends that want to develop a game, developing it, putting the code together, and not being able to release it on the big platforms like Xbox or PlayStation and Nintendo and all that stuff, but having an ability to put it on an outlet like Steam.
Because they don't need the funding, they don't need to have a shitload of publishing money. They don't need a publisher. They don't need a publisher to pour money and then dictate how the game develops. Cause I feel that sometimes the publishers get their fingers in too much of the development and try and tweak the game how they want it. So, that part of the story could be cut out. You could do that as DLC. Yeah, that sort of stuff. And you're right. It allows indie developers to get it up on Steam at a decent price and doesn't hinder them. No,
and I have to take my hat off Steam, and I hope it keeps the same concept as it's doing. Yes. It's very popular. Lots of people put time and gameplay into it. A lot of people put time and effort back into that community, that Steam community. So I just hope they keep it as it is at the moment. I from my point of view, I hope people start, and if there's any developers listening to this, I hope you start doing a bit more on the Mac. I don't think that's going to start happening too much too soon. But I'm unfortunately I'm a bit of an Apple fanboy, but. But
I coming back on this podcast after that admission.
But I just hope they just keep it going the same way, because they're onto a good thing, and they've been onto a good thing for a long time. But they just need to keep it up like that.
Cool. So I guess sort of segueing out of Steam, but into early access, which is quite a big part of Steam. You've got games that are not finished; they're in an alpha or beta, or even a pre-alpha state, that are released for public consumption. You pay your money up front. It's normally a reasonable price, on the premise that eventually they will develop a game and it will eventually be in a final state, and you'll already have access paying up front for it. A lot of them offer feedback forums where you can help them sort of tweak and develop the games, give them your opinions. I'm personally early access, and this is the same for Kickstarter as well. It's a similar sort of concept, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it, just because I moan about Assassin's Creed being incomplete, and I know it's different. They're not telling us it's a complete game. It's not the same, but there's no guarantees that these games will get finished. I don't think, and there's no guarantees how long it's going to take. It could take 2, 3, 4 years, and if you make the most of when you purchase an early access game, then by the time it does come to full release, say it's 2 years. Who plays the game for 2 years that long? You'll be burnt out of the experience. I just feel that, for me personally, I don't like to experience a game until it's completed. I don't want to then sort of half finish it when it's not in a good state. Then the full game comes out and I start playing through it and I'm like, I've already done this. And you can't enjoy that first experience. I get a strong feeling just playing through Grand Theft Auto 5 the other day. Great game, but I've already played through it and it just doesn't hit the high notes that it did the first time round. I like that first experience. I like it to be almost now. I don't think I'm going to go back and play too many games that I've already finished. What's your take on early access? I mean, there's obviously a wider issues of what early access can do, but are you a big fan of buying into games early and watching them develop and helping them develop?
Yeah, I'd have to say that. Yeah, not like you. I've sort of probably on the other side of the fence. That I do like early access for quite a lot of games, and for me it depends on the type of game, the early access, where it would work. I'm not too much of a fan of if you've got a real story-driven game to give that early access, because you don't want to give away stories before it's complete. And to me, that makes no sense. However, there's a lot of games out there that have recently started coming out that are sandbox games where you create your own story, you develop your own city, you do your own thing. To name a few, like Prison Architect, Project Zomboid, DayZ, Minecraft, even though that wasn't through Steam. They're all early access games that were community driven, that would have never got to a stage they're at now without the people purchasing it beforehand, because they would never have been able to put money back into the game and then keep going. And they're games that I feel like every time you enter that game, you're going to get a different story. So you play that game for a different reason. So it might be the type of game like we as I said, we both played Project Zomboid.
£5.
£5.
You paid up front. It wasn't even a sale, was it? That
was the price at the time.
That was the early access
that was
price.
before it was even on Steam.
Yeah.
We got that. And now it's on Steam. They gave us the Steam code for free, which was great. So we've only paid £5 for that. And that game was, when we both played it, it was really buggy. There wasn't much happening to it when it was first playing. But now that we looked at a video of it the other day and was like, crikey, we'd quite like to go back and maybe have another go at that, because they've now implemented multiplayer and they've now implemented terrain decay and stuff like that. And I think in that terms, you'll always get the people that are just going to consistently play it and consistently be amazed now, like in DayZ, where they're sniping all over the place, and you're going to get those people that go in and hack and stuff like that. However, it does enable a player to play it early on, to give money back to the developer, as long as the developer says what they're going to do and they're going to build upon the game, and then you can also give your feedback, and then you don't have to keep playing it. You could leave it and leave it for 6 months to a year, and knowing that it's still going to be relevant, hopefully. Well, majority of the time it's still going to be relevant 6 months to a year down the line. As I said, we bought Project Zomboid over a year ago. I'd happily go back and play that. Prison Architect, another early access. I brought about 6, 7, 8 months ago. I played that for about 10 hours. I'd go back to that. Now, the biggest one that no one can miss is Minecraft.
That blew it open. That's the one. That's the model that everyone's trying to follow now.
It is the model that everyone's trying to follow.
To be fair, they've sold it for what, 2.5 billion to Microsoft.
Yeah, and
insanity.
Three guys that started that company. Threy guys
just gone and bought a mansion in Beverly Hills. 70 million.
Really? Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. Okay. Yeah, it's mental. So I guess for me as a gamer, I don't like playing the experience like that. But I understand. I think it's a good point you've raised, that you're investing in the idea of the game and you're investing in the developers to help them get through this often stressful, expensive and difficult time of actually developing the game. You're actually helping them do that. And I think that you're right. Some games wouldn't get made without an early access now, because they wouldn't have the financial backing and the clout they get, and they might even go down a direction that turns fans off, whereas in early access they're constantly getting feedback. If they're listening to their fan base, they're going to put it in a direction to people that are in touch with the game, that are big fans of it, and they're probably going to get the most out of it. Here's a question.
Yeah.
How many early access games do you have, and how many of those have gone to full release? In fact, how many have gone to full release?
Out of all the early access games I've got, at the moment, I would say one.
One. What game? Do you know?
Minecraft. Yeah.
So that's the one. That's the one.
That's the one. I think you're right in terms of saying that we could be consistently sitting in early access or consistently sat in alpha or beta stages of the game, and and there's no guarantee. Well, you have to look at a game like Rust. They've now sort of scrapped it and said, look, we're going to start again. And fair play, they said, look, you'll get the game again and stuff like that. But there are also other cases where there are developers that just stop and just be like, and they unfortunately say, no, this has now got too difficult. We're leaving it. And there's always going to be the people that take a bit of mickey.
That's the thing I don't like. And I mean, I'm not saying every developer out there's looking to do this. A lot of them are doing it because they love the idea they've produced. But you will get people that are just looking for a quick buck, and that probably take advantage of this. I think the way it should work is if you don't live up to what there should be, I don't know, 3 or 4 points that you have to put into your game. And if you try and release it or stop it before, then you've got to pay back some sort of liability. I don't know, some sort of compensation scheme. Yeah. Then it gets very messy. I mean, that's just an idea off the top of my head. I think, in general, I've got no problem with investing in an idea of a game. What I don't want to do personally is sit there and play it whilst it's going through its development stage, because when I get that game, hopefully the first sort of trailer I've seen or the first hour I've played of it, I'm thinking, right, I want that to be the full game, perfect. I want to play it when it's in that state. So my problem, I guess, I could quite easily solve by just seeing what I like the look of, buying early access, then just shelving it until it's ready, and then coming back when it's complete.
Yeah, and then sometimes you fall in, like, and there's going to be a lot of people that probably disagree with me at this point, and it's about DayZ, because there's a lot of people that love DayZ, and I think it's been watch a lot of videos on DayZ. I don't play it because I've not got it on. It's not on Mac, but so it's coming out on PlayStation soon. So I feel that's brilliant, and I know I'm probably going to be paying £40 to £50 when that comes out, and I say soon, I mean probably in a couple of years. Yeah. But I felt when they released it for £20.
Yeah.
Early access, and it was really buggy, and people will know that and it's still the case where zombies go through walls.
Yeah, and the thing is though, with these people have to understand, it's not like Assassin's Creed. I actually retract what I said earlier, because Assassin's Creed sold me a game on the premise that it was complete.
Yeah.
At no point do any of these early access games say this is a full game, it won't have bugs. It quite clearly states in their little statement, this is not finished, this is not a representation of the final product. If you want to invest, do so at your peril, at your risk, knowing that these points are, and that we will develop it for X amount of years, and they don't tend to put a timeline on it. So, I think it's good. I'm worried about the pitfalls that it opens up to potential scamists or.
You'd have to think, though, and the way I look at it, the scamist is going to have to go a long way to develop a game to get into the stage to put it into a Steam store. Yeah. So they're going to have to put a lot of time and effort into it. And you do, and as I said, going back to the reviews which we were talking about earlier, I've been on a few pages where I'm like, oh, that looks like an interesting. Clicked on it, and I've gone down and people just said poor game, and they played for like 3-4 hours. Said developers stopped developing any more on this game. Developers stop doing anything with this game now. It's not in a complete state. Don't waste your money. And as I said, that goes back to the brilliance of the community driven in Steam. So you can spot it early on, so you don't purchase something that you know is going to be bad. But unfortunately, there's been some people that have had that experience. They've got it bad, but I feel the developers, it's not like setting up a phone scam where they could just literally have to call up people. They have to go a long way to develop something.
There has to be something up front, and you're right, and they have to invest some of their own money. You don't just, me and you couldn't just go out and fire up a game with no money and then start asking people to pay us, because A, they wouldn't, because it would look rubbish, and B, we wouldn't even be able to produce anything with no money. So
exactly.
90% I imagine have got a passion, and they're passionate about their idea, and for whatever reason I guess things get in the way when they're developing, or things don't pan out as how they expect, and it must grind to a halt the development. But
and you see some of the people that are developing it are doing it because they love it, and when these games have taken off, you only have to look at maybe the two biggest sort of indie game developers of the past 5-6 years, which would have been I'd probably say is Notch, and he said he hated when it got big, and he took a step away from Minecraft to do his own thing because he just wanted to code and develop, and he just enjoyed doing that and developing small games. And then you only have to look at Dean Hall, who's now taken a step away from DayZ, because once again he loves developing mods, and he's just developed a mod for Prison Architect, for example. He's got his own. He loves Project Zomboid. He's got his own server running in Project Zomboid, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's made a few mods for that as well. Yeah. And they enjoy it. I get the feeling that these people enjoy developing games for us, and I don't mind giving them some of my money to help them get a passion. I get a few hours of gameplay out of it, and I think everyone's a winner.
Yeah, I think you've won me over then. One of my New Year's resolutions was to not buy any early access games, but I might change that now. I'll have to reconsider that. A lot of these games that we're talking about are normally indie games, so they don't have a big publisher backing them. And what are some of the highlights that you've played? I mean, when did you start getting into indie gaming? Because I mean, when did you start noticing? You're thinking, what's this little? Because look at it, and you go, that looks shit.
Yeah.
The graphics are 8-bit. I've got my PlayStation sitting there. It's got The Last of Us running 60 frames per second. Look at that. Look at Joel's face. That looks real.
Yeah.
And you got these 8-bit things like Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
You say, and it's getting big. It's gone big. It's on the PlayStation now, but it would have been developed for a low-end system. It would have worked on any PC or Mac that's out there.
Prison Escape. We were just looking at that before we came. Yeah, that's an 8-bit game. That's a bit better than 8-bit.
What dragged you into these things? Because the aesthetic side of things certainly wouldn't pull most punters in. It's
no. So I must admit, I spend a lot of my time. I love to play games, but I also love to watch people play games on YouTube and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I've got really into that over the last sort of year, 2 years, and I've just through watching different. I like for getting on to watching a bit of that. That's what got me into Minecraft before it was released. So I started watching a few people playing. And I was like, oh, that seems really cool. That's a really good concept.
Yeah.
And I'd watch it. I must have put hours of watching these
probably
videos.
What you played,
yeah,
really.
exactly, probably. And I brought it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I enjoyed it. And then these people, because I subscribed to their channels, and then I was then watching them play other games like Prison Architect or something, and I was like, that's a really cool game. How can I find out about that? And then, well, obviously other games, but then you'd go onto Steam, and you go on, and then you sign up to Steam and sort of realise there's a community there, and you're like,
there's a big library sitting there, ready.
Just sitting there, and then you start to realise these games are a lot more reasonably priced than paying £50 for a console version, which is. Like, I don't know, like, how's a child meant to save up their pocket money to play these games anymore? They're not. They're £50. They have to get it for, like, either they've got a lot of pocket money, but they have to do a lot of chores, or it's birthday or Christmas. Yeah. And how can they afford to do that? However, if you've got a household computer, you could potentially have Steam, and they could be playing. Like, you can download that. I'm probably pretty sure they won't want to play it, but like Papers, Please and stuff like that.
They will want to play it. It's £2. They will want to play it.
Talking about a 7-year-old or something like that.
Yeah, I love it.
A 10-year-old, but they were definitely like Minecraft. You could get that when I first brought it. I think I brought it for £15. I know it's £15 in like stores now, but then it did go up. They said, look, if you buy it now, you get it early access, but it will go up, and it did go back up, and now it's gone on to the mainstream consoles. It's gone back down to about £15 again, and I'm not too sure what's going on with that. But I just think. And then I just sort of got into that part of it, and then I was just a bit like, oh, look, there's a whole world of games here that I didn't think about. And I still watch a lot of YouTube and a lot of people playing games, and that's I've subscribed to a few channels.
Dim Digital being one of them.
Dim Digital's right up there.
Yeah. So make sure you subscribe to that.
And there's lots of... And gaming channels are the biggest channels on YouTube. And like, you only have to look at the number 1 YouTube subscribed person, which is someone... No. Well,
really?
Coming over to take PewDiePie. And if you're listening to this and you don't know who PewDiePie is...
Don't subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to this first, then that. Because we sent you there.
But he's
sponsored.
He's got like 300 odd million or something subscribers, which is that's insane. And
bloody hell.
Yeah, and you think, and he started because he wanted to play computer games, and people started watching. People liked obviously his form of commentary, and that's how you tend to get into them.
Yes.
And that's how I tend to find out about a lot of games. And then obviously through Steam, I go onto Steam. Maybe like once a week. I've got the app on my phone. So it's really convenient, and I can just look at the library.
It's not when you message me and I'm trying to do work and I'm getting messages whilst I'm at work. I need to shut that off.
Oh, you're the one responding all the time, so I'm assuming you're doing nothing.
Got a lot to do. It's all packed out. Yeah, I mean, it is cost effective, isn't it, indie game? Because nothing's more than at full price, £15.
Yeah.
And not only that, you haven't got to invest £400-300 into a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One. You can play it on pretty much most of these games, the indie games we're talking about. You can play on pretty much any laptop, PC,
PC.
As long as it's not. You doesn't need to be big. I mean, 5-year-old PC probably. You can play a lot of this stuff.
I'd agree. Like family computers, we've all grown up having a family computer.
Which your dad ruled and wouldn't let.
Yeah, which your dad wouldn't let you on. But a lot of the things have changed now.
Imagine having access to those games back then.
Yeah, we'd have been
laughing.
In the whole world. We just had the internet just coming out. And we was like, what the hell's this?
50k, 6k
dialing up.
Yeah, no, it is good. I mean, I struggle nowadays to define what an indie game is.
Trials, is that an indie game?
Well, Ubisoft publish it, so I can't remember the exact history of Trials. I don't know if they started with Ubisoft or whether they picked them up after the first or second game, but it feels like an indie title. So I think there's two ways. You can either say if it's not published by a certain company that's financially backing them, then they're independently financing themselves, and that's fine. Or even if it's just a title that's not developed at a AAA development studio, And fair enough, they might have a bit of backing, but it's developed in that sort of... It's the indie spirit that Trials has, and it feels like an indie game. It doesn't feel like Grand Theft Auto. It feels like it's a basic game, but it works and it's good fun. I think there's two ways you can sort of define an indie game, whether they encompass that spirit of it being down that avenue, it plays like an indie game, or that it actually is independently developed, independently financed, and helped finance probably through early access and things like that.
Yeah, I'd like to think that an indie game is a couple of friends, maybe 5 people max, that are trying to get a game out that they love putting time into, and they want to be able someone to be able to spend most amount of time into it, and that's why they want us to help fund them. And they've got to a stage where they can sort of roll it out, but they might have jobs and they don't want to do these jobs. They want to put their time into this game, and we want them to put their time into this game. And so I saw it, and I feel very much for that. I watched the documentary that I think a lot of people probably watch if they're into indie games, called Indie Game.
Yeah, good.
And where it talks about like where the trials are like Fez coming out and Super Meat Boy. And there was another one.
Braid, I think it was.
Braid, that was it. And you can see how much struggle they're going through.
Yeah, because you can see how upbeat they are, and then at the start of it, how you can tell them they love the idea, they love the game, and then as the time's going, there's a pressure cranks up. You can see them. You know, the guy who's doing Braid seemed almost like he didn't want to finish it and get it out there. And you've seen the guy who done Fez, Phil Fish. He's left. He's left. He stopped. He didn't do Fez 2. He dropped it and binned it off.
He had a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Like, why has it been delayed? And it was very famous for being the most delayed indie game at the time.
Good game though.
It was a good game.
It's an excellent game. But yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks for coming in. That's been good. This was actually the second attempt at recording it, because we did one yesterday. We was both a little bit hungover, and the recording software bollocksed up, so that was I was livid, but I think we've done a better job today. In fact, so
less beer in the system.
If you think this is rubbish, then you should have heard yesterday's dribble. that really was shocking. But that's a wrap for here. I mean, as I said, we're taking listener questions now on the bi-weekly podcast with Logan and Hall. So if you want to pick my brain, their brain, then you can contact us via Twitter, which is @DimpDigital. You can drop a message to our Facebook page. Again, just search for Dimp Digital. It's the only one out there, and you'll find it. Or if you want to email us directly, it's dimpdigitalmedia@gmail.com. That's it. Game over. So it's goodbye from Piper.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me, Joe Appleyard. Thanks for your time, and ta-da. So that's a wrap. Fucked it. Oh, this doesn't work now. I'm trying
to. It. I'm really getting all confused. Getting too late from now. He needs his bed.
No, it's fine. So that's a wrap. Fuck it.
So near an ending.
So that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me, Piper. It's been good to chat to you and get some different subjects out there for the guys to listen to. Something a little bit more out there and not as fuck it.
It's not Destiny.
It's not Destiny. So that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me, Piper. It's been good to speak to you about some different subjects about the gaming world. It's a lot wider than what we sometimes perceive on the podcast. It's not just about the consoles. There's a lot of stuff out there for PCs and indies and whatnot. So thanks for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us. In terms of you guys at home, we are taking listener questions on the bi-weekly podcast with Logan and Hall. So if you'd like to pick my brain or their brains, you can get in contact with us on Twitter, which is @DimpDigital. You can drop us a message on the Facebook page, which again, just search for Dimp Digital, or email us directly at dimpdigitalmedia.com. Fuck the email address this time.
How can you get that? He was going so well.
I was getting cocky. I just sort of weren't looking, and I was like, I've got this in the bag.
You got to look at your email.
I don't know anyone wants to look at any of this. I just need to start it, and I'll just go off and do whatever, because otherwise it sounds like you're reading something. Fuck me. Right, this is the one. So that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me here, Piper. It's been good to chat to you about some different subjects.
Yeah.
And something a bit more unique. You guys listen at home, as always, you can get in contact with us. Nah, sod it. Just going to use the original Pepper. Let's just get the fuck out of here and enjoy Christmas.
Oh, is Hall coming down for Christmas?
Yeah, he's coming back tomorrow.
Get him to bring his capture tool round yours, because it's just...
Yeah, I could do, actually. I don't know I think he was going to anyway. I don't really want that cunt in my house, to be honest.
Oh.
It's alright.